coin-ops from the past 25 years. Do arcade games even have a future? And what the hell is a forgasm? It's time to turn back the clock as we break down the best arcade games of all time right here, right now on Filter. Diane Mizota, and welcome to Filter, a hand-picked top 10 video game countdown as voted on by you, the viewer, at G4TV.com. Once upon a time, there were no Xboxes. Memory cards were the stuff of childhood fantasies, and multiplayer punch-ups happened after, not during, your game. It was a different time, a golden era when your highs and lows were purchased one silver quarter at a time. It was the era of the arcades, and for most of you, it was the time of your lives. That's why we're here at the Family Amusement Corporation in Hollywood to count down the top 10 arcade games of all time. So, what defines an arcade game as being great, and what are some of the greatest arcade games ever? Here's what a few of you had to say.
Good arcade game should have a good addictiveness factor, a lot of shooting, a lot of action.
Just really fast paced so, people can get through it fast and keep interested in it.
A good arcade game should keep me entertained, give me a good value for the money I'm putting in.
Basically, you want simplicity, you want a general intuitive style, and then intensity.
Numerous fighting games are always fun in the arcades. The Virtua Fighter series, the Street Fighter series, those are the ones that garner tournaments.
I like fighting games, action.
Space Invaders, Pac-Man,
Super Mario Brothers, and going through it on single quarter. That's when you know you're a geek.
Ms. Pac-Man. I really liked that game a lot better than the original.
I don't know, just cool effects, like something that looks cool.
With that in mind, it's time to sit down and take in the best stand-ups. We start the countdown at number 10 with a return to the old school. I mean, old school. Midway released this game in the U.S. in 1978. Some 25 years later, they estimate it's pulled in over $500 million in revenue. Geez, with numbers like that, you'd think it could have done a little better than 10.
I thought Space Invaders was really fun, and I would always, remember that sound, that junk, junk, junk of the aliens coming down, and it would get faster and faster until you died.
Wow. Like Pac-Man, it's old school. If you haven't played it, you're missing out.
It evokes memories for me. I remember, walking in an arcade in 1976, and you walked in an arcade and all the machines were Space Invaders. There was nothing else. It was just Space Invaders. If you went in an arcade and you weren't there to play Space Invaders, then you weren't going to play anything.
Space Invaders was always cool. I always got my butt kicked.
Now, Space Invaders is another really simple concept, but really fun, totally addicting.
The Space Invaders was definitely my favorite. Very addictive.
It was a fun game. Just trying to get to see when it would end, if it would end. That was the thing with the older games like that. It was just, will it ever end?
In Space Invaders, you had to save the Earth, but in our next game, you had to destroy it. In Rampage, you played as one of 3 oversized King Kong-style beasts, and your solitary job was to destroy everything in sight. Utter pandemonium and mayhem were the driving forces behind this game, and that was enough to drive people back into arcades, helping offset a mid-'80s coin-op slump. In 9th place, it's Rampage to the rescue.
Yeah, Rampage is a cool classic game as well, simply because it's all about destruction. It's fun. It's simple fun. You get up on a building, you tear it down.
Rampage was a great game. I always liked to be the green monster because I could identify with him.
Yeah, Rampage was a lot of fun. I like the style of the drawings and how it was like it had some open characteristics that other games of the time didn't have. Like you could go down and eat a human being, or you could just stay there punching, building, or you could like punch someone else.
You could be these big monsters, and then you play with your friends, and then when they die, you can eat them. So
that definitely made you feel better about yourself, knowing that you can grab little people and eat them.
Let's keep it King Kong style as we climb one more spot up the countdown to Donkey Kong. The colorful Nintendo classic had you hurdling barrels in an attempt to rescue a princess from a crazy gorilla. And while you all might remember the light blue cabinet and the orange markings, how many of you realized that this was Miyamoto's first game, or that it was Mario's debut? The thriller with the gorilla comes in number 8.
Donkey Kong was a game. Donkey Kong was my man.
Everyone's got to love Donkey Kong. And Donkey Kong is also, one of those games that really tests your skill.
I love Donkey Kong as an arcade game, but for me it was really hard to beat.
Donkey Kong was the first game, I think, with Mario in it, so that was kind of important. And I remember being really terrible at it.
It was the first game that I can remember that was really colorful, and it dragged me to it, basically. I was mesmerized by the machine.
Donkey Kong was cool because the levels actually changed. Something that's commonplace today. It wasn't back then. You get to the princess, it goes to a different stage, and all bets are off. You got to figure out how to beat this one again. And of course, as you go along, it got tougher and tougher and tougher.
Just getting to the Pie Factory in Donkey Kong was the big highlight. Hoping there was another level, and then just realizing that there were only 4, but it was fun.
That game is Nintendo's most important game ever.
Donkey Kong is a blast from the arcade past, but do arcade games even have a future? We've got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll examine the plight of arcade games in the face of a growing home gaming market. Then we'll keep dropping the quarters until we uncover the best arcade game ever. Do a warrior and wizard combo run the gauntlet to victory, or do some crafty Ninja Turtles instigate a mutiny? Find out when we come back on Filter. Welcome back to Filter. I'm Diane Mizota, counting down the best arcade games from Hollywood's home to classic button bashers, the Family Amusement Corporation. The rankings for Filter shows come directly from the responses you post on the G4 website. To make your vote count, log on to g4tv.com/filter and select the Filter Rater. Then choose a category, vote on a scale of 1 to 10, and we'll take care of the rest. While you're there, be sure to post your suggestions for topics and games you'd like to see covered in future episodes. Let's get back to the countdown now with the game at number 7. What do you get when you take Space Invaders and sprinkle in better technology and more excitement? Why, Galaga, of course! And while taking on the menacing aliens was twice the fun with double the firepower, how much did it tick you off when you shot down one of your own ships?
Galaga's the ultimate shooter, man. I mean, that's the arcade machine I think everybody wants to have in their home.
Galaga was so cool because all these enemies would swarm in patterns, and before that we'd only seen stupid invaders who would just go come down, systematically. Now you suddenly had these insect-inspired enemies that go, and it really raised the bar as to how you had to fight these guys.
Yeah, they're falling, and you just going side to side shooting up.
A lot of people just used to have their little ship sucked up on purpose, right? And then they retrieve it, so you can have the double shooter.
The fact that it was the first game where you would have a double ship where you're shooting. You can only move left and right, which kind of negated the fun of wanting to go up and shoot things, which is later on for the Galaga 3 game. But the thing is, you had progression of stages, you had challenging stages, and you had a lot of extra ships.
Galaga came out in 1981, back when the star of our next game was just an itch in his daddy's pants. Of course, you didn't have to play as Bart in The Simpsons. You could play as Marge, Lisa, or Homer. But as enjoyable as it was to flatten the enemy with your beer gun, I'm sure the Springfield 5 status as cult icons didn't hurt when it came time to vote. The Simpsons finish up in 6th place. When The Simpsons was first released, arcade games were still enjoying moderate success, but in the last 10 years, their existence has been threatened by the emergence of the home console. So we asked a few fans and experts, what do you think the future holds in store for the arcade game?
Arcade games do have a future if it's within virtual reality.
I think in this day and age of high-tech home consoles, I think arcade games are probably on their way out.
The home gaming, the graphics have caught up, if not surpassed, the arcade ones. So the only real difference is like the gimmicks in the arcades, and like say a light gun or a dance pad.
There's a big danger in the arcade business in the future. It's becoming more and more expensive. These big machines are, they're costing like a good 12 grand or whatever, and it's got to guarantee the arcade owners that they're going to make money back on these things.
I think arcade games will be around for a while. I mean, pinball games have gone away. They're not being made anymore, but you can still play them. On the other hand, you've got all this stuff where, you get these machines that you can't duplicate at home, where you have a giant screen, you have 8 people playing at the same time, firing at enemies or working together. Or those, mine car ride games where you sit with a friend and you're shooting dinosaurs and the thing rumbles and everything's moving. You just can't duplicate that at home, and I hope people are still interested in that.
In order for arcades to have a future, they need to look at Japan, look at the success they have still with arcades, and realize that they need to upgrade their format.
If you go to Japan and you look at arcades, it's kind of something that you do for fun. I mean, beyond what we do in the U.S. here. You see people kind of chilling out, they're dancing around. You can grab a beer, get a cup of coffee, and like play some arcade games. So maybe if you can kind of change the way we perceive arcade games and how they're played, maybe kind of transform them into something that is a social activity you can take your girlfriend to do.
Well, no matter what happens with arcade games in the future, one thing's for certain. They'll never flourish like they did when Tron first came out. Remember the first time you saw this game? The cabinet tripped the lights fantastic as you played 4 games per level, light cycles, grid bugs, tanks, and the NPC cone. But as anyone who played this game will attest, nothing, and I mean nothing, was cooler than that ice blue joystick. May have been cool, but it was a one-man show. Gauntlet, however, was a team affair. You could choose to play as a warrior, Valkyrie, wizard, or elf, and up to 4 people could play at once, which was great, because as much fun as Gauntlet was to play, it was a biatch to master. But it was your biatch, and you love it so. Gauntlet comes in 4th.
Gauntlet in the arcade was a lot of fun because you got to play with 4 people.
I think that was the first arcade game I actually got addicted to. I don't know, just it was so huge that you could play it for days and days and just keep on seeing something new each time.
I love Gauntlet because it was kind of role-playing mixed with fighting, and I like the way you could choose to be a certain character class, the wizard or the sorceress.
You had an elf, you had a Valkyrie. I mean, you wanted to play this game, you wanted to find out more about it, you wanted to open walls and keys, you'd have to open secret doors and treasure chests. I mean, it was great for its time, and it still is actually to this day.
I wasted so much money on that sucker. Gauntlet was the perfect 4-player game. You had a big arcade cabinet with 4 joysticks and lots of buttons, and everybody was working together to get through it. And then, of course, it talked.
Oh, that was a heroic effort.
Sure, wielding an axe in Gauntlet was enough fun to land it in the top 10, but what about Golden Axe? We've got to take another quick break, but when we come back, we'll take a look at a few games that you felt should have made the list. Then we'll keep counting our way to the pole position. Does a little yellow fella munch his way to the top, or do some rowdy street fighters beat him down? Stick around and find out when Filter returns. Welcome back to Filter. I'm Diane Mizota, counting down your favorite arcade games from our favorite arcade, The Family Amusement Corporation in Hollywood. We're down to the last 3 spots on our countdown of the best arcade games of all time. But before we wrap up, let's catch up. Here's a quick recap. It may not be a looker anymore, but Space Invaders turned a lot of heads back in '78. It kicks off the countdown at number 10. The roof is on fire. Rampage winds up in 9th. Some 22 years later, it's still hard to beat that monkey. Donkey Kong comes in at 8. Double the firepower equals one big hell yeah. Galaga grabs the 7th spot. The Springfield 5 kick it up a notch as the Simpsons finish in 6th. A high five to Jeff Bridges as Tron lights up the 5th spot. And Gauntlet, the 4-player feast or famine free-for-all, comes in 4th. But let's not step away from the power of 4 just yet. Coming in 3rd is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, another 4-player offering for arcaders that like the buddy system. Tight controls, simple gameplay, and multiplayer mayhem elevated this game to greatness, but the biggest reason this game rises to the top is exposure. Name one thing that was bigger than the Ninja Turtles back in '89. 13 years later, it looks like they've left a lasting impression. Pizza power!
You can't deny the power of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That was the first game me and my brother really, got to be teammates.
I thought it was the best 4-player game at the time in terms of, what to do.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was tight because everybody was tight. You could play with everybody. Like some video games, some people are slower, or they be too fat or something, you know what I'm saying? But with the Ninja Turtles, they all had their separate moves, but you knew how to use them.
I would always be Raphael, and we'd play the game all the way through.
Yeah, I used to be Donatello with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
And I was always Donatello.
Donatello was my favorite though, because that stick, man, he used to go King Griffey on him like, and you just see everybody drop and blow up. It was tight.
The Turtles may have given you a foregasm, but there are still a few other titles that you guys wish would have made the cut. Here's a look at a few games that got filtered out. We've honored a few forgotten favorites. It's time to find out everybody's favorite. When it came to the best arcade games of all time, you guys voted early and often for Pac-Man and Street Fighter 2. What can you say about Pac-Man that hasn't already been said? It's the old school mother of them all, the Pac-Daddy, if you will. But as far as lineage is concerned, Street Fighter 2 did plenty to make its forefather proud. Tons of characters with great moves made this game the intersection where trash talking and competition collided. And now these two games collide at our intersection as Pac-Man takes on Street Fighter 2 in another filter face-off.
Street Fighter 2 is the most important game since 1991.
Street Fighter 2 has to be up there. I think that's probably up there for everyone.
Street Fighter 2, man, that's what really pushed me into the whole video game scene.
Street Fighter 2, that was amazing. With all those special moves.
You're just dumping quarters in it just to figure out what to do. And when you did, then it was a whole new level.
What it really did was take the button mashing gameplay and add a little bit of strategy to it.
It added, more buttons to a game, 6 buttons, more moves, combinations that were unlike anything done before.
You had people from all sorts of cultures come out. You had people from MIT playing like gangster-looking guys on the street, all in fact, just to play this one game.
I really liked it that they had a girl character you could be that could kick ass.
Chun-Li, oh, she is my girl. Yes, I could kick anybody's butt.
I like Guile the best because I could identify with him because I look like him.
I still, to today, think that it's the best fighting game.
Pac-Man is the game. It's really nothing that you could explain about it because it's very simple, as most of you know. But everybody knows you get addicted because you just got to do it better. You just got to do it faster. And them ghosts, I don't want to use any curse words, but the ghosts, you know, they get you every time.
Pac-Man's a classic. Everyone loves Pac-Man. You know, it's one of the forefathers of video gaming.
Pac-Man is nothing's compared to Pac-Man. Pac-Man is great. That's old school. Everybody should have played it.
Simplicity definitely was key. You know, you had a yellow blob. Anybody draws a yellow circle with a slice missing is going to think of Pac-Man. It's just this archetype of a video game character that you can connect to.
This is the greatest. I mean, Pac-Man fever. I mean, we were all caught up in that.
Even my dad was addicted. He had no life, so he would just play for like 5 hours straight.
So which did you go with, the biter or the fighter? Both games have reason enough to be the #1 choice. However, the polls are closed, your votes were counted, and your choice for the best arcade game of all time is Pac-Man. The little guy munches his way to victory! Well, that wraps up this episode of Filter. Remember, the opinions expressed on this show are yours, not mine, so make your vote count on future episodes by logging on to the Filter show page at g4tv.com/filter. Until then, I'm Diane Mizota, and I'll see you next time.